Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is CJ Maurer, and I'm the founder of The Gist. We're an inbound marketing agency and certified HubSpot solutions partner. We work with B2B companies to help them create organic growth and get the most value out of their CRM as possible. And for us, that CRM is HubSpot. And if you know HubSpot, you know that there is no shortage of knowledge-based articles and academy lessons and ways to become technically proficient in using the CRM, both as an administrator or just a normal end user like a sales or service rep. But there's a whole other category of not only understanding the tools and how to pull all of the levers, but also the strategic applications of things. And we live in this world and we live and breathe this stuff every single day. And so our team is always talking about ideas and best practices, things we like, things we don't like. And so today we just decided to sit down and record it, which may be the first of a handful of these little fireside chats or whatever we end up deciding to call them. And so today we decided to focus on sales, and more specifically, sales enablement, how to enable your sales teams. And maybe even more specifically than that, HubSpot Sales Hub. I think what we want to do is have a conversation about sales best practices and then how that is often, or maybe not so often, translated into using HubSpot Sales Hub effectively on the heels of HubSpot just announcing 18 new features to Sales Hub. So we'll get into some of those. We're not going to get into all of them. You can go to hubspot.com/new and see a quick video. It's like 8 or 9 minutes of all of the cool new features. And you can obviously get in touch with us if you have any questions or want to go over those. But today we're going to talk about how to be successful in sales while also using HubSpot, because while so many of our clients in the B2B space have different marketing teams and approaches and different customer service teams and approaches and different needs around their data, most sales teams are, there's quite a lot of similarities. Everybody needs to generate sales, and there's certain universal truths around being successful in sales, whether that's organizing and optimizing your core CRM, optimizing your sales pipeline, organizing your activities, helping your reps streamline outreach, configure price and quote, reporting, and that's just the basic stuff. And so I think there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about and nerd out about. One of the things that personally I think is most exciting and what gets my juices flowing is the ability to translate your sales processes into a CRM so that they're enforced and enabled through tools. We're going to talk about that more, and we're going to each kind of riff on some of the things perhaps that we like or don't like, and offer some best practices. What I think would be a fun place to start would be, what do we think most sales teams get wrong when it comes to using their CRM on HubSpot or not, right? Like we have a lot of experience helping people migrate away from legacy CRMs to HubSpot. So pose the question to the group. I mean, guys, we're constantly helping sales teams use their CRMs better. Well, let's start with where not to go. What do we think? Sales teams, managers, reps, what do you think they get wrong often with their CRM?
I think especially recently, I've noticed that a lot of clients or conversations that I've had with people are goes back to a simple concept of like, well, what qualifies as a deal? Like, how do we even know what's the difference between a deal and a lead? I think that definition gets blurred a lot, and depending on your team or your management or individually, that can sometimes be hard to define. Dealing with a contact or a client recently that they were putting every single one of their leads into their deal pipeline, regardless of if it was actually a sales qualified lead or just somebody that has been added to their system. And obviously that can get pretty messy. That can get pretty hard to manage. Their deal pipeline had over 1,000 deals in it, which is a lot. And I would say of that, maybe 10% of them were actually sales qualified leads.
Like
And
deals that they
through a
actually want to
conversation,
work.
exactly. The majority of them, 90% of them, we discovered were deals with no activity, no activity whatsoever. So no emails, no contact with anybody at the company associated with the deal, nothing. So through conversation, I said, hey, I think you should consider changing this. One, this is not an accurate reflection of your actual deal pipeline, and here's why. Secondly, from a reporting standpoint, if anybody at the company wanted to see how can we forecast this? How many leads do we have? We know that an average sale is X amount of dollars. So we can translate these amount of leads into X amount of forecasted revenue. But when 90% of them aren't even actual deals, that's impossible to do, right? Or it's thrown way off. And they kind of had to come to realization moment of like, oh yeah, I guess we've been kind of doing this not the way that that makes the most sense. So they were able to kind of like change some things, revamp their pipeline, redefine their stages, and eliminate kind of putting any type of lead in or any type of deal into the pipeline, even if it is not really a sales qualified lead. I've had other clients or conversations with people about, well, at what point do we actually get this into, is a deal created, whether that's automatically or manually? I think lead scoring is a great way to automate that. I think obviously your instant sales qualified leads, like requesting a demo or somebody requesting pricing or somebody requesting a sample or something like that. Those are obvious ones, but it's those other conversations or other leads or people that come into the system, into HubSpot, whether that's through a subscription to the blog or the newsletter, or they download a piece of content, or you've just met them at a networking event or anything like that. At what point is the definition of, hey, we need to mark this as an actual qualified lead, create a deal, and then work it through the pipeline? I think that teams need to really evaluate that and regularly evaluate that, so that they can always have that kind of up to date, and then also always try to evolve that conversation within their teams themselves.
I think, first of all, that's a great point. I think it's so funny that, we do all of this work for our clients across the board, work that, I'm personally really proud of. A lot of the work is, sometimes very sophisticated, right? Whether it's really advanced workflow configuration or custom development stuff. But sometimes the best thing that we can do for a client is to simply say, what is a deal? You know what I mean? We are definitely not rocket scientists. That is for sure. That is for sure. Yeah, my I don't know, Phil or AJ in particular, like what I normally say is, here's the benchmark. I usually say when the question comes, when do we decide what is a deal? I always go, okay, here's what I think, and use this as a benchmark and refine from there. It may not work for every company, but a deal happens when somebody enters into the sales process in good faith, which means they know that they are going to talk about sales about potentially buying your products and services. So that could mean that they've filled out a form on your website, or a rep cold called them and said, yeah, sure, I'll take a meeting. So inquiring through the website and agreeing to take some type of meeting, that's generally how I define it. I know that's how we use it for our own pipeline. If somebody says, hey, I have a friend I want to connect you with, maybe they're interested, and they send us an intro through email, I would email them back. It would automatically create a contact record for them in HubSpot, right? So I have that activity history, but I wouldn't create a deal unless they responded and were like, yeah, this this sounds great, like we definitely want to do more marketing, or we definitely want to get more value out of HubSpot, then I would create the deal. Is that pretty much what you guys would say?
Yeah, that that would be my advice. Like the more like to Phil's point, like with the example of putting every contact in as a deal, I had one similar to that this past week too, where they wanted a workflow that every time they emailed directly a contact, that it created a deal automatically. And so there was a lot of discussion on why this isn't good, and why this is not going to help your sales process. And to your point, CJ, like it is, you've got to narrow it down to when your contact really has expressed an interest in working with you. It's going to make your pipeline more successful. When you look at everything, you're going to see, clearly what you're working with. You're going to be able to put your focus on the right people at the right times this way, instead of having this abundance of contacts in your deal pipeline.
Yeah. And like when we help people configure their pipelines, right, we obviously start with stages. Like, let's define the stages and give them descriptions, so that can almost serve as like an internal wiki or reference point, which is great when training reps. Like, hey, this is how you create a deal. You move, here are the triggering events that should compel you to create a deal. And then here's when you move it to these next stages and what that all means. And then one of the things we invariably get to are things like automations. So if your pipeline was cluttered with if there was a deal created for every single person that you send an email to, what happens when we want to turn on our workflows that remind reps, escalate the deal, say, hey, this deal's been sitting in this stage for a week or 2 weeks, or whatever the sales manager believes is right for that, that particular stage. Then they're just going to get constantly peppered with these escalation notifications, and then they mean nothing. Then you just shut them off. You ignore them, right? Because if they're, it's just, it kind of makes sense, right? If there's so many deals, then it's hard to value each deal as much as it should be valued and give it the attention it needs. And we haven't even gotten into multiple pipelines either.
I always think that the first stage and the last stage, or closed loss stages, are the hardest. Everything in between, I don't want to say is easy, but that's all process. You know what the process is. Like, okay, then this happens. Then we send maybe we review our services, or we do a needs analysis. And we send a quote. Then we review the proposal or the quote. Then, it's either follow-up conversation or whatever. It's part of the process. But the new deal stage, or new whatever you call it, getting that in there is tough. And then the closed loss stage is like another one, because that one's also some level of subjectivity of like, well, when is it actually closed lost? I mean, you can put in some standard operating procedures of like, if there's been no activity for 4 months, then automatically move it to closed loss. But at what point does a sales rep just have to say like, okay, this deal is now closed loss. There's no chance to win it, or there's no chance that we're going to win it now. Maybe there's a win back opportunity in the future, but until we cross that bridge, it's closed loss. Those are the two hardest stages I think there are to really define and get a client to buy into, of like, this is what we think it should be. And if you agree with it, this is how we would set it up. Or if you don't agree with it, that's okay. Tell us what you think, it should be instead, and we can work within that parameter. But I always think those are the two stages where in conversation, it's always like, okay, how are we going to go about this? Whereas in the middle parts, like you said, those are pretty easy. You get your automation set up to move deals or to escalate things if they've been there too long, or to notify people, but they're pretty standard process oriented, cut and dry triggers. It's the other ones that are a little harder.
My friend Jason, who's one of the best sales leaders I know, I remember him once saying that obviously the best outcome in a sales process or a deal is a yes, but the second best is no. Like, the worst thing is this nefarious purgatory where,
right,
this like sales reps, and I've been there too, where like you just get all excited about the volume that's in the pipeline, and you can delude yourself into thinking that more is going to close than actually will. and you can, so we talked about maybe not giving deals enough attention. Sometimes also on the shadow side of that is spending too much time on a deal that's not going to close, or not just accepting its fate, right? As soon as a deal closes, won or lost, obviously we all want closed won, but close lost, to your point, like what we always recommend is, yes, you had a close date, so you can track when those deals lose. Close loss reason, right? So you can look at all of the reasons why you lose deals, and then on top of that, find commonalities, right? Like, what if we notice that, hey, we lose deals in general because of price, but actually these larger clients or clients that were referred to us by this channel partner, they're actually, if they're gonna not buy, it's more likely because of, I don't know, this particular product feature or a lack of integration over here. Like you can really use the close loss reason to kind of gain more insight into, who your ideal customer is by understanding those buying patterns. So close date, close loss reason, is there a win back possibility? Yes or no? And then a follow-up date, right? So that way, as soon as it moves to close lost, you accept your fate, you stop chasing down the lead, the deal, whatever, that isn't going to buy, at least not right now. Then you can enroll them in a nurture, and you can be ensured that the rep is going to get a notification when it's actually time to follow up.
It's almost like if you just titled the stage closed loss and then put parentheses for now, like reps would be more likely to be like, all right, I'm going to move this here now. Cause it would feel maybe like subconsciously, like I didn't lose the deal. It's just for now. I can come back to this later on. I don't have to keep chasing this because it's just for now. Right now, it's not a good time, but maybe in 6 months or a year or sooner, it will be. And I can accept that fate versus, nope, this is closed. It's gone. It's out of, like, I'm never going to get it. And this looks bad on me. And now I was planning on this commission and now I'm not going to get it. So I wonder if you had the ability to test that out, what that would look like.
That's a great, isn't it funny how like labels can be so important?
That's what I mean. Like it's kind of like
we have a client in Indy that has a no for now stage.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Nice.
They have a no for now. And their sales close ratio is quite good. That's interesting.
It just puts a more positive spin on it, I don't know. I would love to test that out over a long period of time and see if like a case study when they change the stage to that, if their win back goes up or if their close lost ratio, I guess if you had another stage that says like permanently close lost, do not contact or something like that. Somebody that explicitly says like, no, I'm never going to work with you. Then what that would look like.
Never, ever. Have you guys ever seen How I Met Your Mother?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah. So that was one of my, like, for a while, that was like one of my like passive viewing shows, if like I'm doing something else, like working at night or folding laundry, like I would put that on the background. That, The Office, couple of others, right, where you don't really have to pay attention, but I just like it. It's lighthearted. I think it's pretty clever. There's one episode, I don't know what it's called, but it was something about like keeping people on the hook. And it's about stringing people along without giving them ultimatums. And the example that they use is like everybody is on somebody's hook and everybody else has somebody on their hook. Like this guy, Ted, the main character, there was this one girl that just kept stringing him along and she kept saying, no, I don't think it's the right time for us to be together, like right now. And when he realized that, he got all mad. And then he realized there was this other girl who had a crush on him and he had her on his hook. So that adds absolutely nothing to this conversation, but me, I had to share the anecdote. Great show. Definitely kind of like a guilty pleasure show, I would say. But back to that. I mean, one of the things that I nerd out about so much is how you can use your pipeline. And Phil, we've given presentations on this, but how you can use your pipeline in two ways. One, to reinforce what your processes are, right? So any sales leader has documented processes. At the very least, there's somewhere on a Word doc, which is, this is our sales process. This is what I want you to follow, right? And if they're documented there and it's trained, and then there's coaching, the sales manager has some semblance of an understanding of if those processes are being followed and how and by whom and how well and whatever, right? But there is no guarantees for ensuring that those processes are being followed unless they're built into the system. So for example, if the process is to conduct a needs analysis before submitting a proposal, and you can't submit a proposal unless it's been approved by the manager and the deal stage is updated or whatever, then you can build those stages into your pipelines, and you can require reps to enter in, current provider, pain points, solution interest, source of business, size, industry, like just a handful of things that they would have to know or ask anyways, so that they physically can't move deals forward or close them out unless they follow the processes. Like, that's what makes it such a reliable tool for a sales leader. And obviously there's a fine line between gathering valuable data and reinforcing processes, as well as like turning this into some laborious exercise in manual data entry. So people need to understand the balance there. But to me, that is such a, the fact that you can configure your pipeline and your CRM to reinforce your processes and make sure everybody follows them. And then the other is how your deal pipeline in particular can and should be an instrument for growth. Like, the data that you capture throughout that pipeline not only can populate to reports where we can gain insights into, hey, where are our customers coming from? Why are they buying? Why are they not buying? Right. And the executive leadership team can learn things that can actually inform decisions. But then again, even with the nurturing, so if you capture certain information, you can segment your prospects into different lists. And if like they don't buy and they're no for now, they can be on certain, marketing lists, and you can send them things that are relevant to them, all because you instituted this system for capturing at least a modest amount of data in the process. That's what I like really, really geek out about, and why we spend so much time building workbooks for that. What about multiple deal pipelines? Somebody else, like we run into this all the time where clients want to either consolidate or expand pipelines. What's the thought process behind that?
For me, it's whether or not it has a different process. So if it follows the exact same process, like whatever reason, whatever use case that they have, considered building a second pipeline. If it follows the exact same process as their original pipeline, there's really no use case for a second pipeline. You can use a custom property to segment it, those particular deals from other deals. You create views and all of that, and it keeps everything into one place. But if it's a different process, or I guess the other exception is if it's a different team that's handling these deals, then I would suggest a secondary pipeline. That's kind of how, I'm sure there's exceptions, other cases that I could be talked into recommending a second pipeline, but I think it's overused sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Everybody's trying to consolidate their tech stack, and then sometimes they get into one and then they, silo it all out. But so to your point, like if you have two major business units, one's apples, one's oranges, right? If it's the same team that's selling both apples and oranges and they follow the same process, put them in one sales pipeline, and then you just have a property on the deal. Is this a deal for apples or oranges or both?
You won't lose any reporting or anything like that. You can segment everything out. But now your sales reps are just working out of one place instead of having to bounce things around.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in the sales standpoint so much, but I will say, and it's the same concept on the ticket side, same idea. I mean, it's especially for implementation teams or onboarding teams or anything like that, same concept. If you follow the same process, why bother complicating it by just having two ticket pipelines? But if it is a different onboarding process or implementation process, different steps that have to be followed, different automations or requirements that have to be met, then yeah, absolutely. Like from a management standpoint, it might be easier to keep track of workload and everything like that with two separate pipelines. But so same concept, not in sales, but yeah, I agree with what AJ said.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, we were recently contacted by a prospect in Boston, and I think I told you guys about this guy. Really nice guy, smart, his awesome business. It's actually so impressive. He's like the only sales person. And so he's like self-configured his HubSpot. The stuff that he's done up to this point is like really impressive. And they have a couple of different services, products and services. And he told me that he has 6 pipelines. And that's one of those things where in my head, I'm like, okay, maybe there is, I learned enough to assume that, okay, maybe there is a legit case for at least 2, but 6 in that instance is mostly overkill. But then again, and this is where, thankfully, I personally have gotten better at this, but I would always like fall back to, well, the best CRM is the one you use. And if you're comfortable with it and it's working, like far be it from me to tell you how to run your business. But the problem comes with scalability as this business grows and you get more sales reps and more things are siloed. It really is not a best practice. So I've become a lot more comfortable at advocating for the best practice. Ultimately, it's still the client's decision. We're not going to make those decisions for them, but yeah. Yeah. The one thing I will say, and maybe this could be a segue, because I know earlier we were talking about some pain in the butt issue regarding HubSpot reports, and which happen to be sales reports. But one thing that I really wish that you could do within a deal pipeline. So everybody or most people knows about, conditional or required properties. So you can structure your pipeline so that nobody can move a deal into a particular stage unless certain fields are updated. Very simple. One thing when it comes to multiple pipelines that I really wish didn't make me want to separate out pipelines, but when there are multiple, because think about this, you can have 2 different product or service lines with the same process, but one product or service line, you have to capture different questions than the other. And so when the needs analysis is complete, do you want to clutter those, like all of the different questions for both properties in the required properties? What I really wish you could do is, and I heard through the grapevine that maybe this is coming.
Yeah, it is. It's
It
in
is
beta.
okay.
Yeah, it's in beta.
Okay, well, you can explain it, but yeah, what I want to be able to do is, if let's say you move a deal to needs analysis complete and it's type of deal, it's deal A, B, or C, then depending on whether it's A or B, then it will prompt you to require different properties based on what the type of deal was. Up to this point, you can't do that. And that's been one scenario where companies have broken out multiple pipelines, even though the team is the same and the process is the same. And in theory, it should just all be consolidated into one pipeline. But what's the status on that, AJ?
It's in beta. I'm not sure if it's a public beta or not, but it's in beta. Matt and I were actually playing with it yesterday. There are a lot of good, really cool things with it. There are a couple little things that probably need to be addressed or fixed. Like with your deal pipeline example, it'll work for a few of our properties that we typically do. for example, source of business and specific referral source. So we set this up a lot where when a deal is created, we require source of business to be filled out. And then we don't require, but we prompt the specific referral source in case it's like a partner referral or a client referral. The rep can capture the specific referral source. Now we can actually not require the specific referral source on the actual pipeline, but we can make it conditional that if they choose client referral in source of business, that it will prompt the specific referral source for someone to fill out. That's all great. But when you talk about like, if this deal is this product type and I want all of these different sets of properties to be required, but if it's this type, I want all these different sets of properties to be required, that's going to get really complicated because you're not going to be able to narrow it down by stage. It's just based off of when that first initial root property is selected, instead of by the particular stage that you want this piece of data collected. So that it will work in some cases. It's not going to work in every case. The other thing, it doesn't, we have it tested in workflows, and that's one of the pieces I would like to understand. If we automatically set a property that has a conditional logic around it, how that's handled in a workflow. It doesn't work in forms as of yet, although you can manually set it up in forms. So some cool things. I think that, by the time it goes live, some of these things will be addressed, and we'll have several use cases for using the feature. I'm excited, at least. Yeah.
That's awesome. While we're on this subject, because if anybody's watching or listening, we're as about as big of HubSpot advocates as you can find, but we're also realists. Like, there are definitely we run into dead ends sometimes. It's not often, but we definitely whether it's a dead end or a kind of like a workaround situation that's a little bit less than ideal. For example, like we just had an issue. Phil, why don't you talk about the issue that one of our clients is frustrated with on their report dashboards?
Yeah. Essentially what they have is a dashboard full of some sales related reports. And originally we had it set up so that it would update every month at the first of the month for update the reports to show to filter for that month that they were currently in. So mostly quota attainment reports. So if they, how many sales they have, or how close they are to their goal for a quota based on individual sales reps, right? So originally it was automatically set up that on the first of the month, it would change to that month. So from September 30th to October 1st, automatically switch over the report. If somebody was to pull up that dashboard with those reports on it, it would show the current numbers in that month. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, HubSpot had made a switch, and that is no longer an automated process, meaning it just doesn't, we can't switch it over automatically to be this month. They removed that option. So now you have to actually put in the physical month that it is, in this case, October, right? So for those reports where you want to view what the attainment would be for the current month of October, you just have to switch it to October, which really, in hindsight or in review, is not a complicated process. It's an easy thing to just go in there, change your reports, takes a few seconds, not very long. However, the client was a little bit frustrated by this just because they thought it was an automated process, which it had been up until this point. And, for whatever reason, HubSpot made the decision to not have that as an option anymore. And there's not a whole lot that we can do about that.
Do you think they made the decision, or it was an oversight? So basically, you could always be able to. So you always used to be able to have default filters to show last month or this month. Now you have to, the time-based filters are based on like a specific, week, month, year, whatever. So if you can't just jump in, if it's October 15th, you can have it default to September 2023. But then all of a sudden, if it's November 1st, it's not going to default to last month, meaning it would have automatically updated to October. So now there's, 30-ish seconds of manual updates that you have to do to bring your reports up to speed how you want. Yes, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal. It's 30 seconds every time, you need to review
on the first of the month, right?
But on the other side, to me, it's almost like the principle. Not only does that seem like something that should happen, but we literally worked that way before. And I honestly can't think of a scenario where HubSpot has removed a feature like this. Part of me wonders if it was an oversight when they overhauled how they structured report dashboard filters.
Well, I think it's only with the quota attainment reports that I've seen so far. It's not with like all reports, custom built reports, anything of that nature that you're building yourself. And there were a lot
those are
of,
built. Yeah,
yes,
sorry,
they're built
separate
by
from
HubSpot. Yeah. And I think, there have been a lot of updates to goals specifically.
Which are awesome.
Yeah, they're great. And it's probably I'm sure there's a logical reason why, because it was needed for whatever feature that they're pushing through. But that's the thing that happens sometimes. I had a client yesterday too, where this new feature that brings all this value, it's really cool. It saves time, makes you more efficient, makes your database accurate, whatever it is, whatever value, brings all this value. But with the feature, you're now having, you're overlooking this one little thing that may not be that detrimental at all. It may be something simple, but we have to have it this way so we get all this value that we don't have this one little thing anymore. And it's that balance of understanding, the reasons why, like how much you're actually getting from this versus, what you're losing, and trying to help them understand that piece.
Yeah, and especially if you're, if you are, we run into this all the time, like maybe executive leadership, members of the executive leadership team whose primary relation to the CRM is just to get their monthly or quarterly reports. So if those reports aren't delivered and customized exactly the way they want or the way they're used to, or they hear through the grapevine that whoever produces those reports to them has to jump through a couple of extra hoops, maybe they'll get frustrated. But I think to your point too, is that, this is something that we all could learn. This applies to more than just us and HubSpot, but trying to see the forest through the trees. The way HubSpot has grown over the years is just tremendous. Like, I just have so much faith in the company and the product team, because just time and time again, like I'm a kid on Christmas, AJ at Partner Day, waiting for them to roll out at Inbound, their conference in Boston, like waiting for them to roll out the new features. I don't know. There's not many things I anticipate with such excitement these days, because I always know it's going to be on point. So I think that's a good reminder for everybody is, listen, don't just like shut up and accept the shortcomings. Voice them. Let people know. Let us know. We let HubSpot know. You let HubSpot know, right? Like, this is how it gets better. Maybe it's something they overlooked. Maybe there's a good reason. Maybe it's on the roadmap, right? But more often than not, the changes produce wholesale benefits, from the bigger picture, and not to get too hung up with, a little personal preference. Because in the grand scheme of things, with all of the tools that have rolled out, the leads tool, the prospecting tool, playbooks now being available in professional instead of enterprise, lead routing, quotes and payments, all of this stuff, goals and forecasts, like, these are just new features that have just been dumped into an existing subscription. It's just inherently more valuable. I agree with you. Does anybody have a favorite, speaking of new features, like, does anybody have a favorite new Sales Hub feature. I'm at HubSpot.com right now /new. And it's pretty cool. There's this video of 18 new Sales Hub features.
I think the the prospecting, the leads piece, all of that they've added in, I think that is freaking great. I think that was definitely needed. I also think that it helps for us specifically when we have clients that are moving from a CRM like Salesforce into HubSpot. This really helps them understand how to set it up and how to use it, because they're used to that leads piece in Salesforce that HubSpot didn't have previously. And then just having access to all your activities, all your tasks, your meetings, sequence information, all of that in one place, instead of us building out dashboards trying to capture as much of this information as possible and filtering it by which user is looking at that dashboard. This is awesome.
This is, I mean, I use it myself. This is our demo account. So obviously not in our real portal or our client's portal. This is amazing. So if you're a sales manager, you can jump in here and toggle between any of your reps and check up on them. But obviously if you're a user, if you're a rep, it'll default to you. You can see like what you got going on today, or anything that's overdue. It rolls up into one place. You can check out your schedule, enroll people in sequences. This is awesome. And then to the point about leads, so a lead could be, usually it's a contact, it could be a contact or a company. So what's super cool about this is this tool, it's kind of like, it's kind of like its own object, but kind of not.
Right. It's definitely not an object, but it behaves like an object, I would say.
That's a good way of putting it. So it's not like like a ticket, which you can customize all the properties and associations and associate it with other objects, right? But it does behave like its own, because you can go to your own place. It is its own entity. And it populates automatically, and you can do all these cool settings like how to assign leads and route leads and categorize them. And so then rather than trying to filter through all of your contacts or all your companies, you can go right into your leads and just work them from here, right? I can jump right in, and now again, we're in a demo account, but normally there'd be a bunch of leads listed here. Go one by one. Create notes, emails, update the lead statuses right here, attempting. And this is super cool. And the reporting that you can do on this, it'll let you know when your last activity was, your next activity. I mean, this is just a treasure trove, in my opinion, for sales teams. I mean, it's been beneficial for me, who I run sales for the Gist. And we're far from like a very sophisticated sales operation, right? When you have a typical like sales department with some type of sales leader and a team of a handful of people or more, like something like this is just going to be awesome. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to talk about? I know I'm asking a bunch of introverts.
I mean, the only other thing, the two big things that stuck out to me was the leads and the prospecting that stuck out, like AJ said. But kind of a similar piece to that is also the meeting handoffs, being able to book meetings on behalf of others. That is going to, I think, help speed up the process, make it a little bit more seamless. Especially because we end up making workflows to handle, on a form submission or whatever stage. It could be anything, but I'll use form submission as an example. Now we're assigning the contact to a new contact owner, and they have to decide. Based on, they could have properties in there already that have said, oh, well, this person already is at this stage, so now we're ready to bump them up. Let's go ahead and see if reach out, send them a reach out email essentially. And then eventually, maybe one of these emails has a chance to book a meeting, but then that has to be coordinated elsewhere. this is to me a way that can help speed that up and make it, not so bumpy for the person that's going through it, that actually is going to be, either buying a product or, interacting with the client in some way. This, I think, is the other big piece. But aside from that, I don't use a whole lot of sales. For me, I'm mostly on the internal side. So for me, those were the two big things that stuck out to me, because this is going to make my job easier. This is going to make my job a little bit quicker and a little bit easier to manage. So for me, that was the other thing that really stuck out the most, where was that. And a little bit on the sequences, but I'm not entirely sure how I feel about those yet. I've only seen a little bit from what they've the video that was on the guide, the release and update page they made. They also made a YouTube video that kind of went over it a little bit, but I haven't seen a whole lot for the sequences. So I'm a little bit interested, but I don't know what all is going to come out of that.
It's funny. 8.5 minutes is a long time to ask somebody to watch a video, but they pack a lot into there to the point where it's nowhere near long enough to fully understand, I think, some of the implications of these features. If you're in HubSpot and as well versed as we are, like, we can easily connect the dots, because when they reference certain things, like, we know what that means and how that can be configured on the back end. But I would definitely imagine if I'm somewhat of a novice HubSpot user, or I'm considering a new CRM for my sales team, I would want more context into this, so yeah, definitely go to hubspot.com/new, check out these new features. It's not just Sales Hub, but I mean, that's the I would say the most sought after newness of it all. And we would definitely meet with anybody if they wanted more explanation, understand what this means and why these things are cool. I actually have a quick question for AJ or Matt. Do either of you guys notice which sales reports are most commonly requested, or maybe ones that you think are underutilized and are more valuable than people people often think?
Most requested, usually I'm going to tell you, a lot of times they don't even know what reports that they really want. That's what I get. But I guess just, all the revenue reports, wanting to know the revenue for each pipeline, or by rep and that sort of thing. I guess that's probably the most by source is probably the most common. That and activities, really wanting to know, what's going on in the CRM, what the reps are doing.
How many calls or emails sent, things like that.
Yeah. There are some new reports that they've released that I think will be valuable, and I would suggest to a lot of clients going forward. Funnel reports that are capturing, how long these deals are in each stage, but gives you a great visual as well. And, to tie it back into how we started this conversation, those type of reports can help you define some of those pieces, like when is a deal close lost? You can take a look at, how are these deals performing at each stage level now, and use that data to really be able to adjust your process if you need to, and redefine what's a close lost deal. So I think those will be valuable.
Yeah, right on. That's good. Once again, more and more updates. I mean, I obviously realize that the most important output of a sales team are closed deals and revenue. So obviously you should understand how much is coming in, how much is potentially coming in, forecasted, who's bringing it in, where it's coming from, all of that. And activities, obviously, that's how you have a sales manager holding the team accountable, because they know you can't always control the results, but you can control the activities. So they may have activity quotas, or at least just benchmarks, because they know that if a rep is struggling and not bringing in as much deals, the first thing they're going to go back to is, show me your activity. And I'll tell you, and 9 times out of 10, there's not enough activity. There's simply not enough. And what's great about HubSpot, for anybody who doesn't know, is that you can integrate it with your phone, your calendar, your email inbox. So you don't actually have to spend all this laborious time logging activities manually. You can just make calls, schedule meetings, send emails, LinkedIn messages, templates, sequences, and just go about them. They'll automatically log, and reps probably appreciate that, because I'll tell you what, my first sales job, I was so scared of failing. I did so much activity, and I never would have went back and logged in the CRM, because if I just placed a call, I'm writing myself a quick note, and this was back when I had to do it all in like Excel. I'm writing myself a quick note, maybe scheduling a task when I learned how to do that in Outlook, and then going on to the next. I don't want to spend more time I just want to spend the time doing the outreach, not logging myself doing the outreach. So I can totally understand it. The one thing I will say is that I think if you configure your pipeline to capture like basic data about who these prospects are, what they're interested in, and things like that, like what we sometimes call like the deal insights. So show me break down all of your deals by what their pain points are or what solutions they're interested in, and cross-reference that with other attributes like how big they are. You can really learn a lot about who is attracted to your business and why. So guys, I think we're gonna call it. Thanks so much. I think this was a fun conversation. Excited to do more. We'll have to think about what topic we want to hit on next. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks, CJ.
Thanks, guys.
Happy birthday.
Adios.
Yes,
Thank
happy
you.
birthday.
Bye.